Hi, welcome to TheatreCast, presented by the EdReach Network, giving educators a voice, a big voice. You've reached episode number 60, being recorded July 13th, 2014. This is a show where theater teachers and professionals share their passion for theater trends, share practical advice and tips, and ask questions of some of theater's most innovative collaborators. I'm your host, Nick Cusimano. Danielle Files is traveling and is unable to join us this week, but we have a great guest for you. Fred Stewart from Theatrical Rights Worldwide is joining us.
Hey, Nick.
And where are you? What city are you joining us from?
I am in lovely Chico, California, 3 hours north of San Francisco.
Oh, I'm sure that's beautiful weather. Much better weather than
Huh? It's 100 degrees. It's a very hot town, but I don't mind.
Oh, okay. Well then, I guess we're both hot. I bet I have more humidity here. In Fred is the director of marketing at Theatrical Rights Worldwide, and we're gonna chat with him about the process of licensing musicals. And I know you all have some great titles, and you're of course adding more every day, or not every day, but throughout the year. And some of your you all hold the rights to Spam-A-Lot,
we do,
which is a great show. And I know one of your newest ones that I'm sure you all are being busy and booked is Addams Family's Values.
Addams Family is flying off.
I'm sorry, Addams Family. Sorry, I'm thinking the movie. Which I'm sure October the printing presses are going to be or September. August and September, those printing presses are probably going to be.
They're already going. People are in rehearsal. There's hundreds of productions around the world. It's awesome.
And can you tell us some of the other titles you all hold?
Yeah, I mean, recently we picked up Big Fish, which had a short run on Broadway, but when everybody in the office saw it, we all fell in love with it immediately, and we're very glad that after it closed, we were able to negotiate that deal and bring it on board.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting show, and also it's not a small cast, which makes it great for high schools to do.
It's an ideal. I mean, we see everything on Broadway and love it or not. We love it when we see shows that really fit the high school and community theater model still, that are classic musical format that allow for 12 or 15 people to have good featured roles.
Mm-hmm. And I think your catalog has a lot of those available to people who want to produce shows. And Addams Family's got the chorus of the ancestors, which is great.
Yeah, and that was actually a really interesting story. On Broadway, the show was not treated too kindly by critics, but it did run over a year, had a very successful Broadway run. But coming out of it, a very innovative producer named Stuart Oken worked with the authors and us to work on the show so that in Act 2 specifically, but also in Act 1, that the ancestors, who are an amazing bunch of chorus parts, really function as the lifeblood of the show, and that they drive the plot, which was lacking a little in the Broadway production. And now that they nailed that, I saw the tour when it opened in New Orleans 2 years ago, and now that the tour is just wrapping up, it's been hugely successful on the road.
Yeah, I think it's just a really fun show, and people are familiar enough with the title that it intrigues them, but they have a sense of what they may see, but also the show has so many fun surprises. And,
I mean, it's an irresistible story. It's a little bit La Cage aux Folles and other stories where, of course, one family is trying desperately to be normal, and it falls apart on both families to much comic effect, but also the show has a very deep heart, where Broadway steps in when it takes movies and really delivers, even if they're like comedy, like Spam-A-Lot. Broadway and beyond demand shows that really capture a Broadway arc through the songs, and Addams Family certainly delivers.
Yeah, I think it's just great, fun music, and you get a variety of types of music within it too. Um, you know,
Yeah,
a tango, of course, and all the and
yeah,
you know some
absolutely.
traditional Broadway fare, and then a little bit of legitimate voice, or so you have the full range in there. Um, so, if I were a high school theater teacher, what
Uh-huh.
is the process? And I know there's some things that are specific, which I appreciate that Theatrical Rights does for its customers.
Yeah, I mean, the process of licensing a musical over the years has seemed, and plays, but specifically musicals, has seemed like a little bit of a mysterious process to our customers and to industry-wide people who are charged with the task of saying, okay, we're going to do a musical with kids here in high school, and who do we contact to get the scripts and all that? There's really only a handful of companies in the world that do it for Broadway shows, of which we are one. So once people have, through an internet search, or if they're in the know and they say, oh, TRW has that show, or somebody else, they contact us for whatever title. And then we go through a series of people say, well, how much is it to produce Spamalot, for instance? And if there is no answer to that question until we get information from the customer, which really is not as mysterious a formula as people think. There is your gross potential, which is how much money you could possibly make if you sold every ticket at full price, and then you have a median, and then you have a low end, and we need to get that information, and that's what we base the author's royalty off of, and the materials charge that we charge. And once we have that information, you can pretty much, if you don't change your seating capacity or ticket prices too much, you have a pretty good ballpark of what a musical will cost through us or any other agency once you've ballparked one of them.
Hmm.
And again, it's based on a percentage of your ticket sales, which, if you're looking at your overall budget, should be coming in at 15 to 20 to 25% of your overall budget is not unreasonable, really, when the show that you're putting on is such a huge part of what draws cast and what draws ticket sales, or what draws, in a high school theater department, your overall goodwill behind a title. And whatever title it be off of Broadway, that's what you're paying for there, and that it's the author's livelihood that whenever their work is performed live, that is, they are compensated fairly for that.
Yeah, I don't think people or the normal general audience realizes that there are royalties that are attached to for producing a show. Unless you do Shakespeare or something public domain, there is people need to be paid for their work. Um, and so it's just, I don't think people realize how much that cost is.
No, it's our primary concern as a fiduciary organization that we deliver the authors their royalties and also promote and protect their work at the same time. But we find very much that our customers have enjoyed what we do is offer them, if they want to keep the materials from TRW, they can keep them. Which for years in this business, if you've ever directed a show or stage managed, especially show people, getting the scripts back and chasing them down becomes a
Yeah,
large thing, and we want to get people out of that, because we already know that customers have materials. It's an industry-wide thing that we know is out there, but that people really want to pay their royalties and get their materials and do it in an upright fashion, and we're here to help that and to really enable theater communities to not be scared to call us. And if, we always see what we can do, because our primary concern is that our author's work is promoted and gets done.
yeah, it's great that you allow that to occur, because one, it's as a yearly process,
Yes,
except
it
when I
is.
do a theatrical rights
Well, when
show.
I taught for
It's
years,
just like I have, you have to chasing kids down. It takes
I was the worst. I will tell you, every stage manager I ever worked with said, I'm going to clobber you if you don't get the scripts back from the kids. And I would always forget on the last rehearsal, and we were all patting ourselves on the back, and then you say, I've lost all those scripts, and it gets to be very expensive. So, and we
yes.
realized, some years ago, we led with first digital perusals for Broadway titles, which took us convincing the industry somewhat that frankly, a digital item is far more protected than sending out a hard copy,
Mhm.
which the digital age understands, but our industry has been slow to come to it. But once we pioneered it and did it, of course, the other agencies followed, and we were glad that they did, because really accessibility, and when you want to read a title, I know from years of directing, I would get a catalog from an agency out and say, oh my gosh, this show looks really interesting. I'm going to order a perusal to that. And then, 6 weeks later, here it comes. And by then I'm like, what was I thinking? I've already booked the season, or I'm not hot on it anymore. And we like a customer who says, I want to read that show, and they read it right now and they say, I'm doing it. Whether it's a good decision or not is up to them, but it's offering a little more impulse buying, which I think theater people warm up to, because when you really read something and it captures you, if you're like me, I start to imagine my production, who I'm going to cast, and what the logo's going to look like, all of it.
Yeah, I think, and you are right that with our industry, it has been slow to come to technology. It takes
A
scripts like
little
you,
bit. I mean, it's
scripts
changing
like you.
now, but
Yes, I mean, but just I would say past 2-3 years. But before that, it was, you know, it would take pioneers like Theatrical Rights Worldwide pushing that envelope and saying, hey, people have their iPads, they have their computers, they have that's what they're reading things on, and
yes.
and um, but if you like you said, one of the functions of being a license holder is to make sure that your things you hold the license to are produced. And,
It's
and
our
getting
primary
people to
concern.
read them, I mean, it makes it that much easier. Um, I produced The Good War a couple of years ago for our
Yes,
Veterans
Gene.
Day um, production that we did, and so it was great to be able to have access to that. It was all there, shared stuff out, and at least at the high school and probably middle school and elementary level, then those become mementos for the
Absolutely.
students who, because I have a couple scripts from shows I did when I was in high school, and I probably
I've
had
got them
paid,
all.
and you just pay them, you pay the money.
I,
But, uh, you know,
I've got everyone on the shelf. From when I did them in high school, I was one of those kids who would keep it and cost my high school $10, or they got the money from me. But you want those scripts on the shelf, so we're glad our customers are able to have that option and say, yeah, we're
plus,
going to
if
keep
I
those
ever want
all.
to produce it again, all I have to do is give you a call back up, and
Yes,
that you've got them hooked. And I know as a theater teacher, which going to start pointing at the here, which I can't believe. But sometimes you
absolutely.
do repeat shows.
Especially in any environment, community theater, regionals, and when you're teaching, if you've got that show in your hip pocket and you know the kids are going to benefit from a great experience, going back to a show every 5 or 7 years I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, as long as they've graduated, I think you're fine.
Oh
As
yeah,
long
you don't want
as,
a
yeah.
freshman going, we're doing spam a lot again. I would be okay with that.
Speaking of Spamalot in the high school, I think not this summer, but the summer before at the festival, I did a workshop presented by you all,
Yes.
and they gave a lot of suggestions that you all already worked out with the author beforehand. So, can you speak about that just a little bit?
Absolutely. We tend to do that. I mean, as we're licensing contemporary Broadways, and by and large our authors are still alive and vital, we like to contact them right away and say, look, when this perusal gets read, they're going to come to a certain word or one little scene, something that is not intrinsic to the fabric of the story of the show, and it's going to stop them from doing the show based on their local school district or just the vibe of their community theater. They might say, we can't use that one particular word. And so rather than having people say, well, your contract says you can't change anything and there it is, so I'm not doing the show, we try and in advance offer anything that the author can agree to and be involved with so that the dramatic structure of the show is not altered. and it comes from them is our preference, so that we can offer alternate lines like we've done in Curtains, or in the case of Spamalot that you asked about. I mean, Eric Idle is a fun guy to meet with, as you can imagine. And pinning him down on anything is a task, because he knows this show won the Tony Award for a reason. It's quite brilliantly constructed. But he was all about it when we said, you know, when you get to this one word right here for some high schools and youth theaters, and he said, well, here's another perfectly good word. Dung is also funny. And so we said, well, yes, it is. And so he didn't have a problem with that. When people call and say, you know, we can't do a certain show because of the subject matter, and this is addressed, those are things that we say, well, then you'll need to think about another title, and we totally understand, try this show. But when we can, like with Eric's involvement on Spamalot and, you know, other shows that we've taken off of Broadway, and we do not try and take a show and immediately say, oh, you know, what can we do to cleanse this thing? No, no, no. What we're about is being sensitive to a certain thing that is not going to change the fabric of the show, stopping people from otherwise giving the show to their community. And frequently we have to say no to some things that they say, you know, we would like to cut this, or we would like to eliminate that. But when we can, we work with them and try and get it done.
Yeah, so something, if you're on the producing end of it, if you run into those things where you're like, I'm not sure, one, call ahead in advance and ask, and call ahead in enough time.
Well, exactly. And you want
that you all have a chance to talk to the authors and see if that's okay. But like you said, you know, when I was at the workshop, there were so many adaptations they gave that could work for that show, which was great, which made, you know, that it could be possible to be done, which is, you know, I think a lot of the parents now who are around my age, you know, they're very familiar with the movie.
Yes.
And would, you know, like to see it on stage, but, you know, they're able to work through those, and like I said, all I remember from that workshop, there was like one of the last lines of the show could not be changed, but I mean,
yes,
there
which
was,
is again where anytime you're going to be tampering with vital exposition, key rising action, the climax of the show, or the moral through line of the show, the story, then that's always going to be disallowed. But generally we find, you know, we've had hundreds of productions of Spamalot, all shook up, shows that have parts that a very few places say, you know, that's not for us. But with hundreds of productions of those worldwide, we understand that people are embracing appropriate shows for their school districts and community theaters usually, and that they know pretty well what kind of things their audiences are going to go for. When I was first working on Spamalot, while it was still on tour, I get to take shows up in the summer to a performing arts camp called French Woods Festival, which is a really fun summer, and they put up first-class shows in 18 days. And I love to get back out and direct, and you have all these kids who just live, breathe, and eat musical theater. It's really fun. And I did the show in its entirety with them there, without changing a line, and it played beautifully. And then I took it to my former theater, which is still operating in Lincoln, Nebraska, the Haymarket Theater, and we did it with 11 through 18-year-olds. And again, we didn't feel the need to change any lines there, but we did identify a couple that we were able to say, Eric, I don't know if this part's going to fly, and what do you think? And he would either say, no, darling, you have to keep it, or yes, we can fix that part. And really, with Spamalot, there's very little that isn't able to just be performed by everybody.
Which, you know, it's great that you all are open to help with that process. And
well, we're lucky because
and you know, it's great that we have an intermediary who could, you know, say, well, we will ask, and
I think our competitors, by and large, are very much that way, Nick. You know, all the major licensing companies are really receptive to hearing about that and dealing with it. We're lucky that as the newest company that does major Broadway licensing, we have built a catalog of shows and authors that we really know as friends and family, and so these kinds of conversations are, something that we enjoy doing, and also as curators of a relatively, select catalog of contemporary Broadway and other shows, we have a stable of authors that we're in regular contact with.
Can you share, well, I am a high school theater teacher, but what shows come to mind that's in your catalog that would be great for either high school theaters, community theaters to do that
Well,
would
all of our top
work
Broadway
well?
titles, I mean, we have, and I can get into our deeper catalog, our off-Broadway and beyond too, because there's a lot of gems in there that are ideal. But as you look for your classic high school musical theater experience, community musical theater experience, we've got, of course, the Tony Award winners, which I'll get to, but a strong performer for us since we picked it up after its run on Broadway has been Kander and Ebb's Curtains, which, is just been a stellar performer for us, and it had a lovely 500-plus performance life on Broadway. And after we picked it up, though it did not mount a national tour, we found that community theaters started especially, and then high schools doing the show in droves, because it's got 7 solid female leads, and you're able to say yes.
Really hard to find.
Really hard to find.
Yeah.
And any show that we look at, we take that into as a large consideration on our how we're going to go after the show when it's in the bidding process, because our customers at all levels tell us this is one of the biggest problems is, when I have auditions, I've got 75% females, and the show's always flipped the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as contemporary writers, we count on them to address that. But we look at all of our shows to see if there's wherever you can cross-gender cast, you do it, or if specifically the authors prohibit that, we note that as well. But Curtains has been an irresistible, performer for us. And All Shook Up, again, these are shows that we don't mind when a show's Broadway pedigree, that we speak frankly about it, as the show was pretty well beat up on Broadway, as kind of a poster child for critics going after the jukebox musical phenomenon, which All Shook Up certainly is. But as Joe DiPietro, now a Tony Award-winning and world-recognized wordsmith, took this show, he actually made a brilliant melange of Shakespeare, Twelfth Night, considerably, along with all these great Elvis songs. And it puts together, for theater people, I think it ties together that thing so that you've really got, this show is Twelfth Night, so that directors, too, who don't usually do musicals or who are skeptical about the show at first get it, and they're like, okay, we've got a great story inside of these songs. And, the songs obviously are natural. Elvis Presley's catalog is arguably, it's the biggest brand in the world as far as a collection of songs. And so as that has distanced from its Broadway run, it's become an enormous seller for us, and we couldn't be happier with how people have embraced that show everywhere. Ring of Fire is not a big high school show, but we've had some high schools do it. Community theaters are doing it like crazy, and recently our director of professional and international licensing, Sean Saccone, worked with Richard Maltby Jr. at Milwaukee Rep to bring the show down to where 5 performers can do it successfully by playing all the instruments and doing everything else. And that show now has taken off and had a huge second life, as Sean was able to work with the authors and the Cash estate to make the show a little more accessible for pro theaters, especially, who like when casts get down to 5. They love that. And of course, in community and high school theaters, we like to have big casts, so that is, sometimes a rub when we're picking up shows, but we like to have something for all of our customers, and Ring of Fire certainly fills that bill. Recently, the acquisition of Big Fish, and of course we love Andrew Lippa, and his score for Big Fish is really a stellar Broadway score. And the fact that it opened early in the season and closed is the only reason that it was not nominated for Best Musical this last year, which was, in my opinion, an egregious oversight. But we knew, and I think you experienced this, Nick, when we were at the EDTA Festival in Lincoln a couple of weeks ago. I mean, theater kids and teachers know this show. They've heard the soundtrack, even if they didn't see it on Broadway. And they came up to our booth in droves, said, "Oh my God, you've got Big Fish." And we were elated to hear that. And it's starting to pick up in licensing. And it does take, on a show like that, some learning curve, Nick, to get people to buy the soundtrack, listen to it, watch the movie, and then say, okay, this story is universal. I can cast it, and let's do it. And I think audiences, when people say, well, you know, I'm scared of doing a title like that because people don't know it, or they didn't know it was a Broadway show. And I always, you know, as a marketer, say that is your opportunity to say, we're the kind of school or community theater that does this stuff, and we know the people in New York, and it's going to be a high school premiere for this whole area. And I think that gets people really behind a project that then they say, oh my gosh, the show has everything going for it. I think Broadway critics really reacted poorly to it, Nick, because they don't like to cry in public. And this show gets you going. I was there alone, as I want to do when I go scout shows, sitting next to some strange gentleman that I did not know, and he and I, 8 minutes in, are both weeping. And I don't mind that experience at the theater. It's what I go for. It's what I seek. But I do think Broadway critics, sometimes that kind of raw emotion, they have, you know, a difficulty in really advocating for it. So we did not mind that it was not critically as well received as it could have been, because we all saw the show and adored it, and we can tell our customers are finding the exact same thing when they read it and listen to it. And we think we're going to get a lot of production. That was carefully constructed shot as turning the office around. We're theater people, right? You got to get a good shot.
Yeah.
And then we picked up Ghost, the musical, which on Broadway, again, was critically not well received. In Britain, they've gone bananas for it since it came out, and we have a strong presence in the UK, and having seen the show there, we were all like, this is a no-brainer. Let's pick this show up, and we went after it strongly, and we're very happy to put it in our catalog. And now we've got production starting, and of course with Ghost, the first thing that people saw it, or even if they didn't, they say, oh my gosh, you know, I don't know how we would do all the special effects, and not necessarily a show we could get done. And we're telling people right away, you're theater people, you'll figure out how to do this in a way that gets that done, because we've all delivered, you know, having done Shakespeare or whatever, Hamlet, you got ghosts running around. As theater people, we know how to say, look, there's rules about the ghosts, and they come here, and you can do it with lighting, but I don't think this show needs the kind of tech that they do on tour with it, which is a super impressive package. But I think as our customers start to discover the show, and of course when they announce Ghost the Musical on their season, especially in community theaters, people are going to buy tickets, and then they're going to say, wow, there's a great score inside the show that is now featured. I mean, the show is, again, a show that we really believe in. And then also this is brand new, when you were saying about acquisitions and every day, we did just this week, we've been working on a deal to represent the show Saturday Night Fever, which had a run on Broadway in the 90s and now has toured worldwide, and again, especially in the UK. And the president and founder of our company, Steve Spiegel, presented this as an idea to the staff, and we all said, if we can get this show, I think people will do it. And also that once we read the script, and obviously when you hear the score, you've got all the tools there that people will understand. It's about the dancing, the Broadway version, and that we think that's going to be a very exciting and a big title for us as we move into 2015, 2016.
Yeah, that sounds really cool and exciting, and it's interesting how those things work through their cycles. And you know, like the 70s, or you can see the 70s and 80s being what's the word I'm looking for? Reinvented in fashion and those things. And I mean, you can't knock the music. I mean, there's a reason that, you know,
absolutely
the top-selling soundtracks of all time. It's the music of that generation.
Yes.
Um, and you know, one that brings back those memories for those who are old enough to remember it, and also create memories for those who weren't there, but have a sense of what the because it was such a focus on dancing during that time. I remember my parents would go out dancing during that time. I was young. I was very young when it came out. I was like 6 or 7 when it came out, I think. But I still remember listening to music and
Oh yeah.
seeing part of the movie, and it's just it should be pretty exciting for you all as that.
Yeah, well, in the style, what's really exciting for high schools and community theaters is when the ensemble gets to do all that dancing. They quote it all the time in every other show anyway that you see, and it's staples of disco dance moves are rife throughout what people quote now on Broadway. Broadway choreographers who grew up on it, but we think people are going to have a blast doing it.
Well, that sounds great, and I know you all have a fairly large collection, and like you said, it keeps on growing. I know, like we did the Good War, and
Yeah,
which is great to do around Veterans Day.
Absolutely.
We had a good time with it, and just pulled in all those stories, and just all the great songs of that time, plus the stories that were mixed in there. And so it's just exciting of seeing what all that you have available for people to choose and to work with and to do. So can you kind of tell us so like the bidding process? So whatever show that you feel that you can talk about, so a show's ready. It's been on Broadway. When does that process start? And
well, Nick, it's different with every show. Overall the process goes that once a show looks like it's going to close on Broadway, and we're talking specifically now about the companies who compete to represent the rights to Broadway titles.
Yes.
That generally the thing is, without aside from shows that win Tony Awards and stay on Broadway forever, those are a little different case. But shows that sort of naturally cycle through that were hits, but everybody, you can start to read in the press or how they're advertising, or we would know because they would be calling saying, look, we think we're going to post closing and we're going to shop secondary rights. It's really called the secondary rights, which is where a show generally shows then, if they have any legs at all, as they say, end up making the lion's share of their revenue for the authors in that arena, because they'll go on for years and you'll have many, many productions of those titles. And so it's an extremely important step for the authors and the other people who gather royalties off of it, Broadway investors and such, who want their show placed with the agency that they feel is going to do the best job in promoting their show and protecting it, the things that we talked about a little bit earlier. And so as that starts to happen, there's a handful of agents, managers, and lawyers who are in basic, communication with the few companies that are in this, and then like a book company, companies like ours, basically as a distribution and intellectual property protector and promoter, we start to make offers for an advance, which is then recouped against future royalties, exactly like a book advance. And then the authors are paid that advance, and we generally enter into pretty long-term representation deals. Nearing 20 years is pretty common in the industry, but again, those things change per title, and anything can go, but generally these are rather long-term representation deals, which is why you see catalogs basically don't change. Once a show is in a given catalog, it's unlikely, to move to another one. It's happened, but very rarely.
Yeah, I have seen over my teaching career some titles switch.
It happens.
Licensing houses.
Recently, Peter Pan. was with one of our major competitors and jumped to the other one, but it rarely happens because of long-term deals like that that are in place. And once that we've arrived at that, then we wait it out like everybody, and you check your phone and did they text, did they text, and then we either get the green light or not. But during that time, and prior to that, we put together, generally for authors who aren't familiar with us, or as other licensing companies do, we put together a presentation for them of exactly why we love their title and what we will specifically do to elevate it into the market or to protect it. It depends on the author's concerns. Many of them coming off when they're making their secondary rights deal. The show is still completely restricted as national tours, international tours, and Broadway, so that we then do become an immediate protector of that by making sure that there are not unauthorized, unlicensed productions anywhere except those first class.
And can you kind of explain to our audience the differences between, so you have Broadway, and then there's like Lort, and then there's community theater and high school.
Our catalogs by Broadway, and then we have Off-Broadway and Beyond, which includes anything that played true Off-Broadway or by Beyond, meaning a large regional theater that has, you know, international credibility with those kinds of things. And that's an established industry standard, basically, of what fits into those. And then we have a very select catalog of theater for young audiences, TYA titles. And that basically is the three things we have. We also do feature 2 symphonic shows, 3 actually, if you include Not the Messiah, which is a great show by Eric Idle and John Dupre, which is sort of Python's movie Life of Brian, but it's presented as an oratorio and is completely Python-esque and quite hilarious. And then also Trumpet of the Swan, which is a symphonic performance for young people written by Jason Robert Brown and Marcia Norman, based on the E.B. White book. And so that's basically the 4 overall categories that our shows fit into. We don't represent stage plays, only musicals. We have 1 show called Game Show, which is a slight exception to that rule, but it's still got music in it. But those shows overall, as we get into the Off-Broadway and Beyond catalog, they don't do as much business for us, but inside of those shows, we have, of course, Damon Interbartolo's Bear, which is, you know, an anthemic show for a lot of our customers and has had quite a few productions over the years. And Damon unfortunately passed away last year and broke all of our hearts, but we still, you know, that show is very near and dear to our hearts. As there are, you know, plenty of shows in our Off-Broadway and Beyond catalog that are really gems out there. There's a show called The Flight of the Lawn Chair Man, which is just one of all of our favorite shows, and it gets produced some, and people should really take a look at it. It's based on some true accounts that pop up every now and then of people who decide to attach balloons to a lawn chair in their backyard and they go up. And this guy did this and it worked, and really it's quite a brilliant musical that was developed by Hal Prince that tells the story of this guy Jerry Gorman and his ascension into the heights, but really it's, you know, the story of how he got to a place where he said, you know, what I really want to do is fly in my lawn chair. And it's quite an uplifting, funny, and just dynamite musical.
Yeah, I have your website up. I'm not sure if it'll do the screen share quite right, but I know, I mean, you have Ace, The Addams Family, All Shook Up, Anne of Green Gables, Awesome Alley, The First Astronaut Kid, Bear, like we were mentioning before, Big Fish, Breaking Up Is Hard to Do, Captain Courageous, Changing Minds, Charlotte Sweet, Cinderella, The Color Purple, Curtains, Dauntless, Stick, Deadeye, Different Fields, Edgar Allan Poe's Nevermore, Enter the Guardsman, Falling for Eve, Flight of the Lawn Chair Man, Broadway, Forbidden Broadway Greatest Hits, Game Show, Ghosts the Musical, The Girl in the Frame, Go Go Beach, Grease School Edition, talking, as we were talking about earlier, a title that you all then came to acquire recently.
Grease?
Yes.
Yeah, Greece we've represented for a few years, but we represent it internationally. So in North America, Samuel French is still a representative
Okay.
for Greece, but we represent it everywhere else in the world.
Okay. Well, that's great for the clarification.
Yeah, a lot of
Illyria.
people come to us, but our friends at Samuel French and I, we send the customers who need to do it in their territory, we send them to the right place.
Illyria in this house, Ivy in the plus being the musical, Jingo are the way, Little Women, Long Story Short, Love Comics, Lucky Duck, The Magic Jungle, Memphis, and I bet Memphis is.
About to
I
open in
really,
London. Well, about to in October. It'll open in on the West End, and
I'm sure
we'll
they're gonna
start.
love it there.
Yeah, it's such an amazing show.
Yeah,
It's
and they love that '50s time period when it comes to musicals.
oh yeah,
I mean, it's I when I traveled over there in the mid '90s, Buddy Holly musical, which never really took off in the States. It was like played
the
there for
UK
years
has
and years.
very much an affinity for Americana from the 50s, 60s. Absolutely,
Hmm.
who doesn't? You know, as we do for
Yeah,
British rock and roll.
yeah. It's an interesting exchange back and forth.
Absolutely.
Monty Python Spamlot, No Dogs Allowed, Noah's Ark, Not the Messiah that you just mentioned,
Mhm.
Once Upon a Time in New Jersey, Pinkalicious, Ring of Fire, Romeo and Bernadette, Rooms, A Rock Romance, Sleepy Hollow, A Musical Tale, Stinky Kids, A Musical, Striking 12, Studs Terkel the Good War, That Time of Year, They Chose Me, Three Little Wolves and the Big Bag Pig,
Brand new release. Yes.
Tilly the Trickster, Trumpet of the Swan, Wanda's World, um, and Xana Don't.
Xana's
Plus,
all alone on her page at the end there, isn't she?
yes,
I
yes,
know. We're going to redo our website, and it will have a
she's all
drop-down
by
menu
herself.
so that shows do not have to live on page 3 alone.
And then, like you just announced, Saturday Night Fever, which you all have a great catalog for people to choose from.
I wish I could share it today, Nick, but keep your eyes peeled. We have another enormous acquisition that we'll be announcing here just by September 1st.
Well, I will be awaiting eagerly to see what show that I will want to be doing.
It's all I can do not to hum a few bars and give it away, but I would be unpopular at the office when I get to New York next week. So, no.
Okay, well, I'll just wait with anticipation. Maybe you can whisper it at the EDTA National Convention.
That will be Jim Hoare, our director of amateur licensing, will be there, and if you can drag it out of him, Nick, you're a better man than I. He's tough.
So, or I'll just have to wait till September 1st, because by the sound of it, it's definitely a show that I would want to do, whatever it may
Instant
be.
international recognition.
Wow, okay. Oh, thoughts and
You could
thoughts.
be anywhere in the world and say, yes, I know this show. Love it.
Oh, and then I have some thoughts, but I will keep those thoughts to myself.
Yeah, I shouldn't have gone there. I have the worst. I can't keep a secret. But I will until this broadcast is terminated, and then I'll whisper it to you.
So, as we mentioned earlier, you all are kind of one of the groups that's in the forefront of using technology. Can you kind of tell us some different ways of that Theatrical Rights uses technology?
Sure. As a marketer, I've just been. I was lucky enough recently to attend a social media conference in New York, the SMSS conference there, that tells all marketers in the digital age that all we know is that we have to keep ahead of the game with this, because social media has changed the way everybody markets, and theater is no different than anything else. And actually, theater, Broadway in particular, has gotten way ahead of the curve on dynamic pricing, other things that I consider to be high-tech in the marketing and sales world. Specifically for our customers, we embrace technology, as I alluded to before, with our perusals now when no other major Broadway agency was doing it. and in fact had strong feelings about why it, shouldn't be done. And we met with managers, agents, lawyers, and said, look, all of our authors are behind this, because we knew they were, and that we want to go ahead with it, and that the resistance to it, is futile, and we should be leading on this, not slowing it down. It's like in the early days of downloading music. Everybody has that in their memory and says, there'll just be scripts everywhere, and everyone will do shows and won't pay for them. Which, if you can do a show now and not promote it on the internet, then go ahead. But it doesn't get done. Everybody promotes on the internet, and they're easily found with Google searches. Then we send them a bill or say you didn't do that. Hardly ever happens. But the digital perusal was our first leap into it. And actually, I should credit Theater Folk, who is a great company in Canada, pioneered this some years ago with their self-written plays. And I was I was going to adapt Alice in Wonderland, and I came to my senses because I found their website in the early 2000s at some point, and they had this thing that said you can download this script right now and print it with a photocopy license. And I immediately did it and really warmed up to that technology. And then we work with a digital wrap company that makes sure that that is protected. We know when it's been opened. We know when it's been printed. And our customers, of course, love it, because you want to read something right away when you're doing it, especially when you're looking at producing a musical. Also, we've partnered with a company called Right On Cue Systems that provides our version of rehearsal accompaniment and performance accompaniment, and our customers absolutely love this company. They're out of Utah, and if you've used them, this is a superior beast.
It makes the process so much easier.
Yes,
when
it
you're
does.
in the rehearsal, because years and years of tape recorders, if you remember that time, and then
people burning
CDs, or using the Broadway CD, and sometimes they've changed stuff between.
When our customers get infuriated by that all the time, and I say, look, I've done this before too, and it's infuriating, but you can't do that in advance, because your choreographer comes in and goes, hey, I'm ready for rehearsal. Here's the 800 bars, and they're like, actually, that dance break's not there. It's much shorter, whatever. So we, in trying to help with that, this accompaniment out of the gate, and then also that can be edited into augmented performance tracks as well. But early, as I love all my rehearsal accompanists and music directors, sometimes in many organizations those two people are the same thing. And at first they were, this will put me out of a job, and it's quite the opposite. It frees up rehearsal accompanists and music directors to work on much higher level things, while their cast is able to say, look, you can learn your part before you get in. You're an alto, learn the alto part, we'll pre-assign them, and then you find your first music rehearsals and your second ones are skyrocketing, and you get scenes on their feet far sooner, because your rehearsals are functioning with technology in a very real way. Then we've partnered, as most of our competitors have, with this Scene Partner app, which I love. I've envisioned something like this for years, but I'm not an inventor. But this guy, J. Kevin Smith, who did it, it's really a great tool, and we've authorized him, as some of our competitors have, to have the librettos of the scripts pre-downloaded so that they can get off book and have it right there, and it'll read the scene with you. And it stops people from stalking everybody in the green room going, dude, will you read the scene with me, please? I got to get off book. Now they can do it with their phone.
Yeah, I can't wait till they make it available for Android also.
Exactly, right? It's got to go cross-platform, and I think he's probably working on that. We'll see. But yeah, we're definitely hoping with that. Playbill VIP is another one of our partners on the tech end, which is really, it is a tech thing, because it's an internet-based way that people can get a.
And what a great marketing tool too, because it made I used for the first time this year, and it made it so much easier.
Yeah, when your audience gets in and they're flipping through a playbill, I just it really bumps up.
And then you could throw pictures in, either to print, or it's available on your website.
Yep.
It's a great way of getting the information out there. You can start the process earlier promoting your show, because once you've got your cast set, you can just email that out and get your rough outline on there.
Yes, well, it's like we were talking about, like returning books, Nick. It's the program always becomes one of those things, unless you have a brilliant parent committee or a volunteer committee that does it. It just dogs you, and you're always doing it after you give notes at final dress, whatever, and it's, nobody needs that. But we find that is, just a really great tool for everybody.
Yeah. Well, and as one who benefits from your hard work, thank you very much for
when we put those shows,
those changes.
The great part about it is once they've chosen a show, then it pre-fills the musical numbers, all that stuff that's really hard. We also have another great product that our music director, David Abenanti, has been working on feverishly, and it's just been released for Spamalot, and other titles will follow, which is a keyboard patch technology that we send out on a zip drive, and people are able immediately with a Mac. We'll work on other platforms too, that it, and most in this industry, that is 90+% Mac users who use that technology, but it's those people who use it and understand what it is obviously swear by it, because the minute you have your keyboard talking to it, it calls up the exact sounds that orchestrators and Broadway intended for it to sound like, which people obviously, when they hear it, so it saves, again, what we're trying to do is free up musicians to do their higher level things, not sit around programming keyboards all night.
Yeah, I think.
And that's called Keyboard Patch Pro.
That's Keyboard Patch Pro.
Yeah.
That's something which is makes that process so much easier, because getting that particular sound or matching that sound effect, you can do it, but if you all already have it done for me, that just saves me hours. Or
right.
Or sometimes students aren't at that level. Sometimes you'll get one who's great and can do that, but sometimes that's like 10 hours of your life that you're trying.
That you're never going to get back, and you're getting the same result anyway.
Yeah. So, thank you for getting all those things together for us, because, it's, as we know, putting on a show is such a multifaceted thing, and where I can find the help, I will take the help.
Well, that's, on our staff, Nick, we're all former producers, actors, directors, and so we can't help it.
Yeah, and which makes it that much easier, or it just helps with the process so much, and I'm excited about all the things that are out there that can help people who, if they don't have the budget, there are, that maybe I can't hire a designer or, a professional sound designer. But having those things there available to me then makes that process so that it makes it easier and helps us get the show produced.
Yeah, and anytime you can spend working with actors, working on scenes, that's what you want to be doing, as opposed to trying to nail down things that are not necessarily the creative side.
So I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us.
Sure.
This is really enlightening and also interesting, because, as theater, yes, I knew about royalties, but I don't think the general public does not really understand that process. Oh, I have to pay someone to produce a show.
We hear that a lot.
When I tell them how much it costs, they're like, "It costs." Well, not that it's.
It's a considerable production expense. It's a large part of your budget.
Yeah,
And when
I would, like you said, it's a good, when doing a musical, it's a good 15 to 25% of
which is a chunk of change.
But having groups like you out there, that I feel I'm for that 15 to 25% of the budget, I am getting a great product, and you help us get that production on its feet through that process. And I think that's where the magic happens. We all love that end result, but getting there, it's great to have help to get to that opening night and the curtain call of the show, and the process getting there is it's a it's definitely a winding road at times. And 99% of the time it all comes together, and
But not through
So,
this magic that people, they say,
yeah,
oh,
no,
people, that's
it's
just this
hard work.
magic that takes over. And it's like, no, there's no
It's
magic.
hard
It
work.
actually was a lot of hard work. Enjoyable hard work, but
Yeah, enjoyable. And then you add the audience in, and that's adding the audience in is where the magic happens. That
you
creates an upper level, that other thing that can't be reproduced in
it's
rehearsals,
true.
but you have to be ready for that magic, because if you're
Yeah,
just stumbling through, then you're not giving the best performance you can,
absolutely.
and the audience deserves more than that. But I want to thank you for joining us, and if people want to find out more about Theatrical Rights Worldwide, what are some of the ways they can do that?
Well, you can come to our website. It's theatricalrights.com. We also have an ancillary site called trwmusicals.com, which talks about all those lovely tech gadgets that we have that help you produce your show. And that links from our direct site as well. We have a phone number, 646 area code. You can find it right on our website or elsewhere, that 646-736-3232. I said it so fast, if you want to get it, you'll have to rewind and hit it and just go to our website and you'll see it. And we're happy to take phone calls, and you can email any of our licensing agents or give us a ring. We're absolutely available.
Well, sounds great. Want to thank you again for joining us. Want to share with our listeners, this Friday night I went and saw The Miracle Worker at Ivy Green, Helen Keller's birthplace, produced by or directed by Darren J. Butler, who we had on the show, and just wanted to tell you what a great time I had watching the performance, and it's just really interesting. 53rd year that they produced it, which on at Ivy Green, which just kind of blows my mind, and also just the commitment to what she was really good about, that he cast the people the age that their characters were when the events happened, which you forget how young Helen was when that
Yes.
occurred, and that Annie Sullivan was only 20 years old, and Kate Keller was 30 when the story occurred, and just those things you just don't fully realize till you see it there. And we were sat right next to the water pump, and so couldn't help get the goosebumps and the tears rolling down the cheek, and it's just such a great show. And just wanted to let our listeners know that if you are near Tuscumbia, Alabama, which I happen to be at that time, this time of year, do stop in and check out and see it, and also tour the Ivy Green also, and just realize it's not a big house either. It's just I mean, it's a nice size house, but it's not a huge mansion or anything. It's just interesting to see those historical events and the play being produced so close to where they actually occurred. So just check that out, and I think we'll have Darren back on the show in September, talking about an interesting project that he's working on. And be sure to check out for our next show next week, and we'll see you soon.